This is KTVO's Good Morning Heartland.
Welcome back. Summer is in full swing, and that means you should be applying your sunscreen. But are you using the right kind? Are you applying it the right way? I know that kind of might sound like some dumb questions, but they actually have some reason behind it. Dr. Justin Puckett, Medical Director for Complete Family Medicine, is here this morning to break it all down for us. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great, thank you.
So when it comes to sunscreen, what should we be looking out for when we're actually purchasing them at the store?
Well, sunscreens are very personalized, so there are a wide variety of them. And it needs to be something that you can use routinely, that doesn't cause your skin any irritation or problem, that doesn't, you really just want to take anything that might burden you from not wanting to reach towards that sunscreen and remove that from the equation. So lots of ladies' makeup has sunscreen built in, and much of it will have a 15 or higher sun protection factor, or SPF. And so that's something that's kind of you're already doing anyway. So if you just make a transition to a sunscreen including makeup, then boom, you've got that done and taken care of, and the barrier's gone. So, you know, when it comes to the different varieties, you want to have an SPF of greater than 15. That's going to provide you with that broadest, generalist, you know, the protection for the greatest period of time. Above 15, and there's not a whole lot of standardization, so we don't really know that a 50 is a ton better than a 15. It does block more of the UV rays in the clinical trials or in the scientific trials, but whenever we put it on a person's skin and you're outside and you're moving and you're sweating, we really don't know what that means. So it really just boils down to a personal preference on something that has an SPF 15 that doesn't bother you. Okay,
so you just said SPF. What does SPF stand for?
So it's the sun protection factor, and that's how they rate the UVB blocking. So there's two types there's lots of types of UV energy that comes from the sun, but the two types that affects our skin in a negative way is UVA and B. And so UVA doesn't really have a good scale, so a good way that we can say how much is blocked. But the UVB does, and that's where we get that SPF number.
Now, does sunscreen ever expire?
It does expire, and it's important that you take a look at those numbers and see what they're showing you, because they'll often be on the bottom, and if you can't find something, then the general rule is to throw that away at the end of a year's time. So the chemicals that are within that can degrade over time. Some of the old-fashioned sunscreens, like zinc oxide. Remember the stuff that I remember seeing pictures of my parents wearing that were under their eyes when they went to the pool.
Right.
Those sorts of sunscreens actually are the way that they're chemically made. They're going to be okay, but they're an actual barrier. Instead of just blocking or reflecting, they provide a complete barrier between us and the skin, and not a lot of that's getting used today.
Okay. Now, when it comes to applying sunscreen, is there, a proper way to do it? I know that sometimes it says, apply it 30 minutes before you go into the water or something like that.
You always want to put on sunscreen 30 minutes before you go outside. You want to give it time to bind to the skin so that it's going to stay around. And especially like this last week when we're outside and it's very hot and humid, lots of sweating. And so you need to follow the manufacturer's suggested instructions of when to replenish that. So when you're applying it, though, you do want to have a method in place that you don't forget, because we've all put on our sunscreen and oops, I forgot the tops of my feet, and I thought I wasn't going to wear sandals, and I took my socks and shoes off, and then the tops of your feet get blistering red. And so you want to have a method to put it on that is consistent, so that you don't forget the backs of your ears, so that you don't forget the back of your neck, behind your knees, wherever it may be, and then having a way to keep that with you. People are pretty compliant about putting on sunscreen for their first time out, but then once they've been at the pool for 3 or 4 hours and they're wet, and so it's important that you just take the time out, that you dry off briefly and reapply sunscreen, wait an additional 30 minutes so that you can get back in the water and keep going. So both swimming pool water, lake water, and whenever you're outside and you're working hard, strenuous exercise, whatever, that perspiration that's coming is going to rinse away your sunscreen, and so it's important to reapply.
And you mentioned earlier that when it comes to sunscreen, it's whatever your preference is, and just as long as, it has that standard SPF 15. But when it comes to, the lotions and the spray, is one better than the other? Do they work the same?
Well, again, it comes back to that individualized.
Okay.
So if I only have the liquid alcohol-based type of a spray for my kids, my daughter's not going to wear it, and so she hates it. It burns. She doesn't like it. She wants the lotion kind that it takes her longer to put on. but she'll use that. And my boys, they're fine with whatever you've got. So the key thing is just having something that you will use and use consistently and doesn't bother you. So really the difference between sprays and lotions and even the oils, you know, you have to be careful with if you've got a acne prone skin that you don't use those oil-based ones. But really, it's all about what will you use, how often will you reapply it, and will you keep with it?
All right, and finally, let's go and talk about some excuses that we need to stop using in order to avoid sunblock. Like, you know, Riley over here refuses to wear sunblock. So what are some excuses that we hear? The smell, I just don't like it.
Yeah, so it's icky, I don't like the way it makes my skin feel, or it costs too much, which now the prices came down pretty significantly, even for the sprays. Two, it has icky chemicals in it, and the chemicals are going to cause me problems. And one time, whenever they made a mouse swim in it for 3 days, the mouse got sick, and so there's been no human connection back. And then just general, I want the sun. I want that sense of I want the sunshine, or I'm never out in the sun. But it doesn't take more than a few minutes exposure for you to start to receive that damage, and you know, it's all about accumulation over time. And so, especially for our kiddos, you know, we've got to get them taken care of now, because whenever that damage is done today, there's the time ahead is what the problem is. So we want to make sure that they don't get burnt today, so that we don't have problems down in the future. And the idea that, oh, I'm going to go out and tan a little bit, or I'm going to get a little bit of a color to prevent myself from burning, just keep the lotion on, just keep the spray on, just keep that great lighter complexion.
And of course, the cost of sunscreen is a lot cheaper than having to deal with skin cancer later down the road.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, thank you so much. What we'll do is we'll post everything on our website at ktvo.com. We'll link up Dr. Puckett's information with Complete Family Medicine. Again, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you.
And we'll be right back.